Hey, what's up guys? So in this video, we're going to be going over the Escort Redline 360c, which is one of the very best radar detectors currently available on the market. Now, the Redline 360c, it is a high-end radar detector packed with a bunch of bells and whistles. It's currently the closest thing we have to an ultimate all-in-one feature-packed detector. Now that said, is the Redline 360c perfect? No. Are there other detectors that can do certain things better than the Redline 360c can? Yeah. Are there other detectors that are cheaper that are a better bang for the buck? Absolutely. Regardless, this is the detector that's become my daily driver because it checks so many of the different boxes that I would want. For example, it's going to offer long-range performance, good false alert filtering, auto lockouts, arrows, MRCD detection, RDD immunity, good build quality, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, easy automatic updates, etc. In short, I can just toss it up on my windshield and it does just about everything that I need. Now, if you'd like one, I'm going to put a link in the video description to where you can pick one up. A quick note, Escort is currently having some supply chain issues due to COVID. Typically, the Redline 360c is on back order, so what I typically recommend is just to order one if you want one, and then when the next shipment comes in, they'll go ahead and ship one out to you. Current estimated shipping dates you can also find over on Escort's website, and so you can take a look at the latest information there. Now, when this detector first came out, it had a lot of issues. You can check out my initial impressions video. It goes over this in more detail, but this detector actually had a lot of problems at launch. Since then, Escort has been hard at work at continuing to update the detector and improve it, fix different bugs, improve the performance, etc. And you got to give credit where credit is due. Escort has been doing a good job here of actually improving this detector, especially compared to how the detector first looked when it initially launched. There's still a few other improvements that I think it could benefit from, but nevertheless, it's definitely come a long way, and in this video I want to focus on what it's like now with the latest firmware as a firmware version 1.7. There's going to be a lot to cover here in this video, and because I don't want to make this an hour-long review, for your sake and for mine, instead of going into a bunch of crazy detail about every single point, I'm just going to touch on the highlights, the different key aspects to know about this detector. So starting off, let's talk about range. That's traditionally one of the things that the Redline has been known for. I've tested the detector twice, and what I've found is that the detector performs very well. It competes right up with other top-tier detectors like the V1 Gen 2 and the Uniden R7. For example, on 33.8, the V1 Gen 2 beat the Redline 360c, which beat the R7. On 34.7, it was all super close, with again the V1 holding a slight edge. On 35.5, again pretty neck and neck, with the Redline 360c just barely getting the win. Then, after Escort updated the Redline to firmware 1.6, we saw a nice boost in range compared to older versions. Bag & Dragon RDF, who also did some testing and tested with these different firmware versions, reported that with the newer software, his Redline 360c is now outperforming his V1 Gen 2. And so now at this point, yeah, the range here is going to be great with the Redline 360c. It's definitely going to be a top performer. Moving on to blind spot filtering. Overall with this detector, I've been pretty happy with the BSM filtering. Additionally, Escort has recently released an update adding K-Notch, a new filter that's specifically designed to help filter out some of the BSMs that you'll get from Hondas and Acuras nearby. Even with this new filter, though, the detector is still going to false to, well, certain Hondas and Acuras. I see some falses to your Chryslers, to your GM vehicles, etc. And when I asked about people's experiences with the Redline 360c on Facebook or on the forums, a lot of people were really happy with the BSM filtering, but a lot of people were saying, hey, I still wish the detector was quieter. And so I'm seeing a mix of results here, which I completely understand. The Redline 360c does seem to be one of the better detectors in terms of BSM filtering, but it definitely doesn't filter all of them. And this is despite the fact that over on Escort's website, they say that when the detector alerts, the alerts are going to be always true and never false. This is simply not true here with the detector. It's one of the kind of false and misleading advertising things we're seeing from Escort's marketing. I brought this up before, and I really hope that they address this because their marketing a lot of times is just incorrect. So the detector, yes, it does false, just like every other radar detector out there, but it does do a better job than a lot of others at actually filtering out a lot of these false alerts. Next, we can talk about auto lockouts. This is something Escort has had for many years, and they've been doing a good job of working on this. Auto lockouts, as you guys know, are great for automatically learning stationary false alerts like automatic door openers and speed signs, and after a couple passes, the detector will learn those, filter them out for you, and stay muted when you come by again. Now, we can of course go into the weeds here about Escort's implementation of auto lockouts, but in short, Escort is going to err on the side of quietness. They really want to keep the detector quiet. I do think that there's some additional room for improvement that Escort could implement here with their GPS lockouts, but I haven't really seen people getting tickets with it or anything, so it does seem to be doing a good job here of keeping the detector quiet. And personally, I love the fact that the auto lockouts are actually built into the detector here, and there's no phone required to give you the auto lockout capability. Next, there's going to be low speed muting with the GPS built into the detector. This again is a very standard feature that we see in a lot of different detectors, and it's great for helping keep the detector quiet around town, especially at low speeds or in shopping center parking lots. Now, one quirk here with the detector is if you have the detector connected to Escort Live, it can actually go out to the cloud and figure out the speed limit of the current road that you're on, and it's going to change whatever low speed muting threshold you have set to the speed limit of the road that you're currently on. So it's kind of nice to automatically adjust it for kind of city and highway muting as needed. But that said, it doesn't take into account things like temporary speed zone changes due to school zones or due to construction zones. I wish there was a way to maybe disable this feature if you're connected to Escort Live, but just kind of a little quirk here of, again, all these different Escort detectors to be aware of if you're running it connected to the cloud. Either way, though, I definitely like the feature, especially just to keep it extra quiet when you're driving around in shopping center parking lots. Next up, let's talk about the detector alerting to different red light cameras or speed cameras. Again, Escort's going to do a very good job here. Their database is really good. Additionally, their alerts here in the detector are directional. So if you've got maybe a speed camera at an intersection that monitors this way, but not that way, the detector can actually know the difference and only alert you when you're traveling in this direction, but not in that direction. It's designed to specifically cut out some of the false alerts, but I know some people get a little bit concerned because they're like, hey, why is there a speed camera here? My detector's not alerting. That's typically why. So they're doing some additional things to help try and cut down some of those false alerts. Additionally, Escort releases updates for their database every Monday. So when you hop in the car, if you have it connected to Wi-Fi, it'll let you know and you can just, boom, go ahead and update the latest database and download it right into your detector as you're driving. So that's pretty nice. Not every city and state gets an update, of course, every week, but it's nice that Escort is continuing to update it and they push nationwide updates every week. Next, let's talk about the MRCD capabilities. This is something that's been updated recently and has greatly improved the MRCD detection capabilities of the Redline 360c. And so now at this point, it seems like it does a pretty good job of actually detecting the different MRCD photo radar guns that are in use, especially in Canada and certain states in the US. Now that said, I don't have MRCD in my area, and so whenever I turn it on, I wind up getting quite a few false alerts here to MRCD. I'm not always sure what's causing them, to be honest, but reading about this online, it looks like Ford trucks are a common source. And there's a couple other vehicles that can also trigger falses here in your detector. And so a lot of people are saying that the MRCD filtering actually needs some more work to make it more usable, and I would definitely agree with that. Additionally, when you do get an MRCD alert, all of the arrows will actually light up on the detector. There is no directional information to let you know if the signal is ahead or behind or when you pass the photo radar source. I would also like to see Escort actually have unique alerts for both MRCD and MRCT. Currently, when the detector goes off, it just says M on the display to let you know that it's a MultaRadar source. And so I'd like to see some differentiation to let you know if it's MRCD or MRCT, because those are different technologies. Next up, let's talk about RDD immunity. If you're looking for something that's undetectable by the Spectre, the Redline 360c is going to be a great choice for that. And honestly, that's not really a surprise. The Redline platform that Escort's been using here for a while, starting with the M3, that's traditionally been a solid undetectable detector. It's kind of been one of the gold standards when it comes to undetectability. Now that said, that's strictly when we're looking at undetectability with the Spectre. It's different if you're looking for something that's not visible if somebody looks in your car. I mean, if you're looking at a detector like this, it's actually a pretty large detector. Plus the mount itself, it's also kind of big too. If we were to compare it to something like the Redenso Pro M here, you can see this is a much smaller detector, both the mount as well as the detector itself. And so size-wise, the Pro M is definitely going to be a much more compact detector having in your windshield, and it's going to be much less visible to anybody looking in your car. That said, if you really need something stealth, I think something custom installed might be the ideal choice. That way you have nothing visible on the windshield at all. Now, one cool trick I've seen to maybe make this detector a little bit more visually hidden is you can actually pop off the detector from the mount here and maybe just toss it into a hidden sun visor pouch. That way the detector hides in a little pocket and it's not visible to anybody. Additionally, because you're not going to be able to see the detector or maybe press the mute button, you can run a remote hardwire cable like Escort Smart Cord and have a remote alert LED, which will flash when you get an alert. Plus, you've got a remote mute button that'll let you mute the detector or manually lock out alerts and whatnot. So that can be a useful accessory too if you wind up going for the sun visor option. Now, speaking of the Easy Mag mount here, I actually really like this mount overall. I think it's a nice, solid, and sturdy mount. It's one of my favorite mounting options that's available for any radar detector. This magnetic mount makes it really easy to mount the detector or unmount it very quickly and easily, even one-handed. One of the downsides is, yeah, it is going to be a little bit bigger and bulkier than some other mounts, but that's part of the design. Now, something to be aware of is the way that it works with mounting and unmounting the detector. You actually need to lift the detector up a little bit and then pull it off like that. And then you put it back on. There's a little bit of a lip right here. Kind of put it back on the front and lower it down. And this needing to raise it up and down can potentially be an issue depending on where you mount it in your car and the design of your car. For example, here in my car, when I have it mounted, I'm not actually able to lift the front of the detector and pull it out. And so the detector is not removable unless I pop it off with the suction cup mount altogether. In my wife's car, on the other hand, I can mount it in the exact same location and I'm able to pop the detector on and off no problem. So again, depending on the design of your car, it may or may not be an issue as far as how easily you can mount or unmount the detector. So long as the detector fits in your car, no problem, I think it's a great mounting option. Now, something else you can consider in terms of mounts, there's also the Blendmount, which is an excellent third-party mount that allows you to mount the detector directly under your rearview mirror instead. And when you mount it here, again, you've got a nice solid mount, and you don't have to worry about maybe some of the removal issues like I mentioned before. Plus, you don't have to worry about maybe the sticky cup failing and the detector falling off the windshield. Something that I've seen happen, especially with more extreme temperatures. And if you'd like to pick up a Blendmount, I've actually got a discount code for you down in the video description. Next, if we take a quick look here at build quality, overall build quality here with the detector is excellent, and you would hope it would be when you're spending top dollar on a detector like this. So I'm a fan of the button feel, plus the feel of the detector itself. It's nice and solid and definitely feels like it's worth the price in terms of build quality. Next, let's take a look at the arrows on the face of the detector. The arrows are pretty easy to read even in direct sunlight. They're also pretty customizable with different colors depending on the band or direction or different signals and things like that. In terms of the arrows' performance, I find them to be pretty good overall, but they're not yet perfect. I know this is something that Escort is continuing to work on and improve upon, and it's improved since, again, the detector was initially launched, but it's still not yet completely perfect, so something to be aware of here. Next, taking a closer look at the multicolor OLED display at the center of the detector. I actually really like the display here too. It does a good job of presenting a lot of really useful information for you. You'll be able to see things like band, signal strength, frequency, how many signals are present, your current speed, as well as the speed limit of the current road that you're on, again, when you're connected to the cloud. The only real issue that I've got with the display is the fact that the ambient light sensor doesn't do a very good job, especially in kind of overcast weather like this. It tends to make the detector's display too dark. And so a lot of times for that reason, I have to go in and manually adjust the display's brightness and make it brighter in the daytime. And then at night, I'll have to go back in and reduce the brightness manually. And so for that reason, I don't find that the automatic display brightness does a very good job, but this is also true of a lot of the other Escort detectors too. So something to be aware of there. Next, let's take a look here at the connectivity capabilities of the Redline 360c. The C stands for, well, connected as in connected car. So yes, this is a connected detector, and it offers connectivity capabilities both with Bluetooth and with Wi-Fi. First, starting off with Bluetooth, you've got Bluetooth here that allows you to connect your phone to the detector and then run the Escort Live app to add some additional useful features to the detector. Escort has been doing this kind of stuff for a while now with many detectors, and it's going to be the same idea here with the Redline 360c. With your phone, you're going to be able to go in and make it a lot easier to adjust settings in the detector and configure the detector the way that you want. It's a lot easier to go in and do it with your phone than it is to go into the detector's menu manually and adjust the settings that way. Additionally, when you're connected to the cloud, it's going to allow you to display the speed limit of the current road that you're on. That database is not built directly into the detector. That information comes from the cloud, so you're going to have to be connected to the cloud to get the speed limit information. And then the big feature, of course, is the fact that the detector can share its alerts in real time with other drivers, and you can get alerts from other drivers' cars too. Now, I haven't gotten a lot of saves with these Escort Live alerts, but regardless, I do like it as an additional layer of protection with you sharing alerts with other drivers and you benefiting from other drivers' alerts too. Something important to note, though, is that Escort does not offer an open API, so they're not making it available for other third-party developers to create other apps to add additional functionality the way that we're seeing with some of the other detectors, like the V1 and the V1 Gen 2. I really wish Escort would do that, but it's just not something they seem to be interested in creating. Moving on to Wi-Fi. The C in the name really means the fact that it's got Wi-Fi built into the detector, which adds a lot of the same features that you've got here with Bluetooth. Things like the real-time alerts shared with other drivers or the speed limit information on screen. When you're connected over to Wi-Fi, the speed limit will actually show up in white as opposed to in Bluetooth. It'll be the same as your traditional display color. Now that said, there's actually two main advantages when you have the detector connected over Wi-Fi as opposed to using your phone with Bluetooth. The first is that I find the automatic connectivity when you get it back into your car to be much better over Wi-Fi. You don't have to worry about having the app running on your phone, and sometimes it doesn't do a good job of reconnecting automatically on your phone. If you've got a Wi-Fi hotspot in your car, I find the detector does a much better job of automatically connecting every time you get in the car. The second advantage is the fact that the detector can automatically update itself over Wi-Fi, something that's not available over Bluetooth. And so whenever there's a new firmware update that's available, or red light camera or speed camera updates that come out every Monday, like I mentioned, when you hop in your car, the detector will let you know there's an update available, and then you can just say, yes, go ahead and update, and it'll take a couple minutes to update the detector while you drive, which makes it super easy to do just while you're driving. No more having to bring the detector home and plug it into the computer to update. So in terms of the updates, this is probably the easiest detector to keep updated, again, so long as you have a Wi-Fi hotspot in your car. Something to note is the detector doesn't continue alerting to radar while it's going through the update process, which makes sense. So you may have a couple minutes of downtime, especially for firmware updates, which do take longer than the red light camera database updates. Now, another quirk to note is the fact that the Redline 360c only supports 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi. There's no 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi available. And so if your car, for example, has a Wi-Fi hotspot, but it only supports 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi, your detector will not be able to connect to it. A lot of cars offer both, but I know some newer cars only offer 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi, so something to be aware of. And I really hope that Escort, maybe with their future detectors, they start adding 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi support too, because that's becoming much more common these days. Next, let's talk about laser jammer integration. Escort offers several different laser jammers that you can install in your car that integrate with your Redline 360c, and so your detector now becomes the controller and the interface for your laser jammers. And so you can hook it up to the Escort ZR5 or the ZW5 if you like, which is cool, I guess, but honestly for most people I still say just go get an ALP instead. It's a much better jammer, much more capable, more effective, better updates. It's just a better all-around jammer. I guess maybe if you want to get something like the ZW5, that's a cool option. It's a wireless option, so it makes the installer simpler and quicker and easier, and there's no cable to actually run through your firewall, just like there is with all of the other laser jammer options. So maybe in that case, that's a cool option to get the ZW5, but for most people, I say just go get the ALP. For more information about all this laser jammer stuff, take a look at my recent video going over the very best laser jammers, and I go over all of this in way more detail. Next, let's go ahead and take a quick look at how the Redline 360c compares to some of the other top options, both to give you a better idea of what the Redline 360c itself is like, as well as just to compare it to maybe some of the other detectors that you might be considering. First, let's take a look at the Max 360c versus the Redline 360c. Now, the Redline 360c, it's $100 more than the Max 360c, and fundamentally, there's going to be two main advantages. One, you're going to be getting longer range, and two, you're going to be getting the RDD immunity. Now, for a lot of people, this would actually work just fine, especially if you're in an area that's maybe super flat, you got a lot of constant on. I mean, this should be great. This will give you plenty of advanced warning compared to something like this, which is going to give you the longest range possible. Additionally, for most people in the US, we don't need RDD immunity. That's not a big deal, so that's not really a compelling selling point here. For a lot of people, this could be just fine. However, we are seeing some alerting issues with this one. Sometimes the detector may actually stop alerting temporarily when you get really close to a radar source and then resume alerting. Additionally, we've started seeing some situations to where it just kind of goes to sleep and doesn't alert properly to radar signals at all. And for that reason, a lot of times I actually prefer running the Redline 360c. I've got more confidence in it and I trust it more than I do the Max series detectors. I know it's something that Escort's been working on for a little while and they've improved it, but they haven't been able to completely resolve the issue with the Max 360 or 360c. So it's not something that I've seen a lot here with the Max platform, but it is still something to be aware of. Next, let's take a look at the V1 Gen 2 versus the Redline 360c. So this is going to be a great option too. It's $250 cheaper than the Redline 360c is, and it also offers great performance and great BSM filtering. Additionally, the detector, you'll notice it's going to be more compact here than the Redline 360c is. As far as differences though, this doesn't have GPS built in the way this does, and so you're going to be reliant on a phone to get a lot of the same GPS features like auto lockouts, for example, but those apps are actually really, really good, and some of those features like the auto lockouts can actually work better here when you pair it with the phone as opposed to something like this that has it built in. That open API that I mentioned, that's something that's available here on the V1, so there's a lot of really cool third apps as opposed to Escort, who doesn't seem to want to make that available. And so this is a good detector on its own, but it's a great detector with apps. Now, something though the detector can't add just with the apps is your MRCD capabilities for your mobile photo radar. I mean, the Redline 360c has that capability already built in. It does false, to be fair, but it's also doing a good job of detecting it when you need it. That's not something I think that the V1 could add just with the software update. It's possible, but I don't think it's very likely. And so overall, I think the simplest way to explain it is I wind up finding this to be a really great choice among enthusiasts who love diving into all the details in terms of customization and apps and stuff, whereas this I think just has a wider appeal because everything is built in. It's much easier to use. You just plug it on the windshield and you're good to go. It just kind of does everything out of the box. Next, let's take a look at the Uniden R7 versus the Escort Redline 360c. This is an interesting comparison. I mean, this offers a lot of the same functionality for almost half the price of the Redline 360c. This detector also has great range, and it's also recently added auto lockouts, but those auto lockouts still don't quite work properly yet. There's more tweaking that Uniden needs to do on those. That said, in terms of the fundamentals, I mean, the R7 seems to be pretty great there. You've got great range, great BSM filtering, as well as a lot of the other features like the arrows. The arrows could still use a little bit of work here with the R7 too, just like they could on the Redline, but I think the Redlines actually work a little bit better than they do on the R7. But regardless, I mean, yeah, you got a lot of the fundamentals here available on the R7. That said, there's also going to be some features that are missing here from the R7. Things like there's no Bluetooth available, there's no Wi-Fi. Most people don't necessarily need that, but it is a nice extra thing that you'll get from the Escort that you won't get here from the Uniden. Additionally, it has MRCD capabilities, but the latest firmware update, 1.35, actually broke MRCD detection. So again, that's something that Uniden's going to need to work on. Additionally, these suction cups right here, they just don't do a very good job of sticking to the windshield. They fail on me a lot, and I've read a lot of other reports online of people having issues with the suction cups failing. I think one of the biggest downsides of the Detector, though, is the update process. I mean, some people are able to update no problem, but man, this is probably one of the most problematic detectors for people to update. It's kind of wild how many people have issues getting their R7s updated. Price-wise, this detector's price has been fluctuating wildly. It's been kind of like watching the price of GameStop. Now, you can find the R7 on Amazon for about $400 plus minus. I mean, sometimes you'll see it $450, sometimes $375, so it definitely fluctuates wildly. Either way, though, the R7, it's definitely going to be a much better buck than this Redline 360c is. That said, the Redline 360c also offers more features here that the R7 doesn't have at all. Additionally, the Redline 360c is much easier to keep updated over time, which is also something very important. And so the Redline 360c, I think in many ways is a better detector than the R7, plus it offers a lot of features that the R7 doesn't have. But at the same time, I think you're starting to get into the law of diminishing returns here with the Redline 360c. Now, speaking of getting a good bang for the buck, the last detector that I want to compare the Redline 360c against is another Escort detector, the custom installed MaxCI 360. This costs $2,400 for the front and rear radar package, as opposed to $750 for the Redline 360c, so it's less than a third of the price of the MaxCI 360. Now, that said, custom installed is always going to be way more expensive than a windshield mount. But something that's interesting is the Redline 360c, it's a newer detector that has some features that aren't available here on the MaxCI 360. For example, the Redline 360c has added the K-notch feature for the better BSM filtering. You've got your MultaRadar detection for your photo radar. Plus, you've got the Wi-Fi built in to make it a lot easier to get your detector connected to the cloud. Now, Escort could add some of these features here, like K-notch would be pretty easy to do, and hopefully they can add MRCD as well. But it seems like Escort is currently really focused on the Redline 360c. They've been spending a lot of time and energy updating that, and they honestly haven't updated the MaxCI in ages. And then some of the other stuff like Wi-Fi would actually require some sort of physical change, whether it's a new detector or some sort of accessory that doesn't exist yet to add it in. It would require a hardware change. And so, I mean, I run both of them here in my car, the Redline 360c or the MaxCI 360. And honestly, a lot of times I wind up just running the Redline 360c because you get the K-notch for the better BSM filtering and the Wi-Fi. It just makes it a lot easier to keep your detector connected to the cloud. And then this brings me back to the point that I made at the very beginning of this video, is the fact that there's a lot of other detectors that can do many of the same things that the Redline 360c can, but there's no detector that offers all of the capabilities of the Redline 360c. And so, yes, it is the most expensive windshield mount radar detector on the market at $749. But in return, what I think you're getting for that price is the closest thing that we currently have to the ultimate all-in-one windshield mount radar detector. And that's the reason that the Redline 360c has become my daily driver detector. Pop it on the windshield and it does just about everything that you could want. Of course, it has its pros and cons, just like anything else, but overall, I think it's a pretty solid option. And so with that said, yeah, thanks so much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions. You can just ask down in the comment area below. Additionally, down in the video description, I'm also going to have additional links for things like your setup guides after you purchase the Redline 360c, which will help you with learning how to use the detector, programming it, configuring it, all that kind of stuff there. You'll find some additional information down there too. So awesome. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you're doing well, and I'll see you in the next video.